the latest dose of Bipolar Recorder. This podcast may cause dizziness and blurred vision. Enjoy.
Welcome back to the official Bipolar Recorder podcast. My name is Hunter Keegan. Thank you for being here. In an ocean of mental health podcasts, you chose this one, and for that, I am very grateful. It's early August 2025 at the time of this release, and I really feel like the year has flown by. Between the bizarre chicken job that I discussed on the show back in May, to my current case management position and upcoming developments for the Bipolar Recorder project, life has been quite a roller coaster. It's exciting and also a bit nerve-wracking at times. I realized that it's been quite a while since I had a guest on the show, so for today's installment, I'd like to share a wonderful discussion with Ceci, a young woman currently living in New York City. Ceci and I originally met after she attended one of the mental health outreach presentations I conducted at Penn State for Dr. David Weimer's Advanced Abnormal Psychology students. Ceci was featured on the show last year in June 2024, right after she had graduated from Penn State University with dual degrees from both PSU's psychology program and acting program. In this interview, she discusses how she combined her passions for mental health and the creative arts to embark on her career path. We also talk a bit about the possibility of a Bipolar Recorder student internship program, a crazy idea that I've been formulating lately. Let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, Ceci. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Hunter?
I'm really well. Thank you for coming back on the show. Last time we spoke, which was right around 1 year ago, we talked a little bit about your background and your experience at Penn State, where you graduated from in spring 2024. And we were just chatting for a little bit before we started up the show here. And it sounds like you're about to go into a grad program. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that? Like, what program are you going into? If you want to share the school that you're going to, like, you're welcome to do that too.
Definitely. So I am going to be getting my Master's of Science in Education from Fordham University's Graduate School of Education in Mental Health Counseling.
Nice.
Very long title of a thing. But I'll spend the next 2 years there. And then after that, get my license and hopefully be a practicing counselor.
So you're going for an LPC license ultimately, is that right?
LMHC.
LMHC. Oh, okay. Licensed mental health counselor. Is that what that is?
Yes.
Cool. And what are you hoping to do with that license?
Yeah, so my goal long term, they're kind of the way I've been describing it to people is there's three pathways. There's the pathway where I decide to get my PhD right off the bat and go into like being a professor, which I would love to do, but I don't know if I want to do it right off the bat. Then there's the part where I work in a hospital for a little bit and I'm kind of more like community focused and that sort of thing. And then the third option is I go straight into private practice. And my dream with private practice is to work with theater makers and performers and kind of merge my two majors and make it something I'm like, obviously I'm passionate about mental health, but like find a way to like merge my two loves together.
So you're referring to the undergrad work you did in psychology, and you also, the first time we spoke for Bipolar Recorder, you talked a lot about your major in acting, or
Yes.
like, could you also call it theater, or is acting like is it distinct from just like general theater studies or what have you?
Yeah, so at Penn State, it's distinct. In the School of Theater at Penn State, there are several majors and concentrations. So there's a BA, which is a Bachelor of Arts in Theater Studies, which is kind of your more general, if you want to go into like dramaturgy, you want to go into teaching, like that sort of thing, arts administration, but you aren't necessarily focused on being a performer. And then acting and musical theater are both the performance tracks.
Mm.
So you have to be in shows, you're taking acting classes, you're taking music classes, you're taking all of that. That's the majority of your time. And then the third or the fourth track is being in the design and technology side of things. So that's your stage managers, your lighting designers, your sound designers, stuff like that.
Cool, got it. And when you talk about bringing those two fields of study together, could you elaborate a little bit? You mentioned it a little bit the first time that we recorded a year ago, but I was just wondering, like, maybe have you fleshed out, like, more specifically what that would look like as you potentially go into private practice?
Definitely. So for me, it just means working with performers and taking my lived experience as a performer. Um, because there are so many things about the theater industry that are just hard to explain. And it's very much like if you've lived it, you've lived it.
Hmm.
So obviously I've never auditioned for a Broadway show, but I still understand what the audition process is. I understand what the work is. I understand that sort of thing. So I would kind of have a different perspective on working clinically with someone who has that lived experience as well.
Could you ever see yourself auditioning for Broadway?
I would love to keep performing in New York. I don't think I'm ever going to be on Broadway, which is totally fine with me. But I think definitely finding ways to stay in the theater world while doing mental health, like that's something that I want to prioritize. So whether it's doing play readings or I'm doing a play festival with another Penn State grad coming up in August. So those different little things where I'm like, okay, this is my like it's not like what's the word I want? Artistic fulfillment.
Hmm.
So like just doing something else that it's like, because I love mental health, but obviously you need self-care as well. So art is my self-care.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's really cool that you already have like a specific population that you want to work with and that you've defined that niche. Are there any particular mental health conditions that you find impact performers like in maybe a way that's unique from other populations? I'm
I
just
mean,
curious.
eating disorders is the big one.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. Eating disorders, I would say personally, from my own experience, perfectionism and like that type of anxiety is
Hmm.
another thing because you have to hold yourself to such a high standard as a performer. Um, and you're constantly getting feedback and you're constantly having to adapt and all of these different things. So it can be a very overwhelming lifestyle. But in the end, performers are like everyone else, and we're susceptible to anything based on genetics and
Totally.
upbringing and all the things.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's really interesting though. And previously you spoke about your experience with ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So you have like direct experience with that too in your own life. Do you think that that will help, or do you maybe have some concerns that like working with individuals who may be experiencing similar things could be more challenging in certain aspects? Like, have you thought about that at all?
I have. And personally, I think if I want to focus in on a particular diagnostic symptom of cluster of symptoms,
Hmm.
eating disorders would be my first choice just because of that lived experience. I know like parts of it would be very difficult, but also because I have that lived experience with ARFID, like I know what worked for me personally, and I also understand that like the challenges with eating disorder treatment is at this point in time, there are more and more diagnostic things in the DSM-5 that are new
Hmm.
and just need more study. They need more research. And ARFID is one of those things. Because when I was in treatment, I think as I spoke about before, it was very much like, this is what you do for anorexia. This is what you do for bulimia. And there's
Hmm.
one person with ARFID. So it's a very interesting thing, but I would love to help out with that if I could.
Yeah, and it's a super important area that people need support in. Just for the audience, like eating disorders are actually quite deadly, or at least they can be. Anorexia is
Mhm.
actually the deadliest mental illness. So you graduated from Penn State with your bachelor's degrees last year, and you're about to start your grad program, your master's program. What have you been doing for the last year? Like, did you take some time off, or did you do any like internships or volunteer work or something like that?
Yeah, I've been volunteering a lot. So I was selected to become a volunteer crisis counselor in July of last year.
Mm,
So I started in August with crisis text line. So everything is on the computer,
hmm.
just text based. But I have over 200 hours of support for that organization, which has been really eye-opening. And I wanted to do that before I started grad school, just so I kind of knew if I what I was getting into a little bit. And I understand I'm not necessarily going to be working with people in direct crisis,
Hmm.
but having that lived experience of being like, okay, I have worked with people who are actively in a moment of intense emotion and getting a way of like understanding how to navigate that
Hmm.
has been really helpful. So that was one thing I've been doing. And the other thing is I've been volunteering at Sage, which is a LGBTQ plus senior center here in New York. So I've been helping with like karaoke, hosting socials and events, serving dinner, that sort of thing.
That's super awesome. And I think that's really a good move to actually get some direct experience with working with people who are in crisis or people who are from vulnerable populations or what have you. Because one of the concerns that I have, and that I also noticed like many years ago when I was getting my bachelor's in psychology, was like, I think there's a lot of people, well, I know there's a lot of people who go immediately into grad school without really getting applied experience
Mhm.
in mental health or treating mental health. And I think that people who do that are actually putting themselves at like a really great disservice. So I think that's awesome that you got that volunteer experience. And I think the crisis text line is really interesting. What is there anything specific that you've learned from those 200 hours that you spent doing that? Like, what were some of the key takeaways you had for working with people who are experiencing mental health crisis situations?
Yeah, I think the big one is like the language I use,
Hmm.
um, because obviously you gain that experience in like graduate school and like I had one class in undergraduate. Um, it was intro to clinical psychology, and we actually did a couple role plays,
Hmm.
which was super eye-opening, but learning the language and like kind of stashing away in your brain, like these are phrases that I can use when I don't know what to say.
Hmm.
And so I was telling someone recently that even now when I'm in a conversation, it's very much like the third or fourth message I send is thank you so much for opening up to me. I appreciate how difficult I appreciate how difficult it can be to share your story
Hmm.
with someone you've never met. Um, and I think just like learning those different things and seeing how people react and learning not everyone's going to react the same way, and you can't take it personally. I
Hmm.
think that's going to be a really big skill going into mental health counseling. Just knowing like, okay, sometimes people are going to be more receptive. Sometimes it's going to take a little bit more rapport building.
Hmm.
It's just navigating those individual relationships.
Yeah. Are there any other phrases that you've found are useful if you're maybe experiencing some ambiguity in like how you think would be the best way to respond? Anything
Mhm.
else you can think of?
So one of the things we do with Crisis Text Line, we have our strength IDs, which are like ways to acknowledge from the information you've been provided to be like, I can tell you're XYZ based on this. So, like, if somebody is saying they care a lot about school, you can say, I can tell that your own, like, furthering your own education is very important to you. That's very courageous of you to work so hard through this situation to put yourself first.
Mm.
And just kind of navigating that. So like finding those words, like this has been the biggest thing, honestly, is looking through their list of really good adjectives. So like courageous, brave, resourceful, like all of those
Yeah.
different adjectives. And you're like, okay, so now I have those in my head. So when I'm actually speaking with a person one-on-one, I have words I can use.
Yeah, language is really, really important. And all of those adjectives you described are like very empowering adjectives,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Kind of reminding people that they have a locus of control or agency
Mhm.
over whatever they're going through.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. I've never volunteered or worked for a crisis text line. I used one like in 2013 for a crisis situation that I was going through, and it was over the phone, and it was like I don't remember a whole lot about it because I was really intoxicated at the time. Those were the days. But it's good to know that those resources are out there. I guess 988 is also a big thing right
Hmm.
now. Now I'll say that I'm not sure how much may or may not have already heard about this, but there's a lot of controversy surrounding 988 within certain sectors of the seriously mentally ill community,
Hmm.
especially on the Twitter or X platform, which is where a lot of my online outreach is on. So some of the controversies are basically like people are concerned about privacy, people are concerned about how their information and data is being used. Of course, triggering involuntary or coerced hospitalization is a huge concern for me. Like I share that concern with many other people in the community. So these are just like some of the things that we've been discussing lately in some of the peer support groups that I host on that platform. Have you heard anything about like, are you familiar with any of those areas of discourse? Is that something that maybe in any of the volunteer training you heard about or
I don't think we talked about any of that specifically. I will say 988 is sometimes funneled through my program. So like when
yeah.
people text to 988, sometimes like my volunteer organization also helps to like make sure there are enough volunteers with that.
Yeah.
So I can speak to like how I know we handle situations.
Hmm.
And like I don't know, but I don't know specifically. I can understand that would be especially involuntary hospitalization being a concern. I another thing I've been doing recently is taking courses for from New York Peer Academy, or Peer Service Academy, I think, to become. I was interested in becoming a peer specialist, which
Mm-hmm.
is something that I was like, if I have lived experience with mental illness, I can maybe express something. And like, since I'm going to grad school, it's not really something I'm going to pursue anymore. But that's something that those courses talked a lot about is like the concern that people who are dealing with serious mental illness have about being involuntarily hospitalized and also the outcomes. A lot of those courses talked about the negative outcomes of that, which was really eye-opening for someone who didn't have any lived experience with that particular situation.
Right. I think that was actually another question I was going to ask you about was like what kind of um, information did you learn in undergrad or in your other educational experiences with like Peer Services Academy? That's what you called it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Is it
Yes,
something like
sir.
whatever, like something like
It's like a
that?
New York State thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And I think it's interesting because I don't think that that gets discussed enough in formal education programs, like the ethical concerns and
hmm
the even like the non just ideological stuff, but like the actual like realistic outcomes of forced psych hospitalization. I just like when I was in school from like 2011 through 2014, that never came up. Like it was
hmm
like we would take these courses and there would be maybe like one slide on a slideshow presentation that's just like, oh yeah, like sometimes people have to go to the hospital not of their own volition, like unwillingly, you know? And then
hmm
they just kind of moved on to the next slide. And at the time, I was just kind of like, huh, I wonder what that's all about. And then, and then I encountered that in my own life in 2015, and it really, really changed my perspective on like my comfort level of reaching out for professional mental health services. So I think that's really interesting that during the Peer Support or Peer Services Academy, they did bring that up, and I think that's really important because in my opinion, it really should be more of an active part of the dialogue surrounding mental health in America.
No, I would agree. And I think something I really appreciated about Dr. Weimer's classes was always like the fact that he brought you in and like having a person who was willing to share their lived experience was eye-opening about the whole part of mental health, like as opposed to being like, this is a textbook. You will learn. It was like, no, let's have a conversation. Let's have a dialogue about what this means. Um, and I think that's something that it probably depends on where you are, but I always appreciated about those classes.
Nice. Well, I'm glad I could be part of that experience for you and that you got a little glimpse into at least just my individual story. I honestly shy away, not really shy away, but it's something that I intentionally don't go into or haven't gone into a lot of depth about yet during those presentations because when you start talking about involuntary inpatient hospitalization, I think it's like just super sensitive and also a
hmm
very complicated topic that
Yeah.
really warrants like its own probably like 30 to 45 minute breakdown. And so part of the reason I haven't really directly dove into that during the presentations I've done to date is just because time constraints. And then also, it can really freak people out. Like when I go out to Penn State and do those presentations these days, I'm certainly not speaking as though I assume I'm the only one in the room who has like had to be forced into a psych hospital. It's actually
hmm
not an uncommon experience. So part of it is like I don't want to like freak people out. And then the most recent time I was up there, which was last September. It was like September 30th, 2024. And I went out there and I actually did a couple of screenings of like a short documentary that I had produced last year with a couple of people who collaborate with me on the Bipolar Recorder stuff. And so we went out and we did these film screenings, and I did like a much more abbreviated presentation than I normally do because, you know, it was most of it was just showing the film. But like I got this like interesting question from a student who was interning or volunteering at a psychiatric hospital.
Hmm.
And so she started like kind of pressing me a little bit for my perspective on when should someone be involuntarily hospitalized. And which is fine. Like I always like invite those, like I'm open to discussing that sort of thing. But I found myself in this kind of like situation where I was like, I want to be transparent with this student, and but at the same time, I don't want her to think that I'm putting down what she's doing or
Hmm.
trying to uh, discourage her from continuing to work in mental health services. So I just, yeah. So anyway, kind of went off on a tangent there, but like for your awareness, I'm actively working with Dr. Weimer to confirm another outreach date for this fall semester, which I'm really excited about. We're probably looking at a date in October or possibly like early November. But I'm thinking, like, I've been trying to brainstorm more topics to bring up during those presentations, and you've seen a couple of the presentations that I've done,
Hmm.
so I thought I might ask you, like, is there anything that you heard about that? I mean, I know they were a long time ago, but is there anything you remember from those presentations where you're like, oh, I would have liked to have known more about that, or even in general, are there any topics that you think would be particularly relevant to students in 2025?
Oh, I think something that could be interesting, and I understand that Penn State has changed in the time since you've been there, but
Yeah.
like how you
Like I'm so old. It's crazy.
No, I was just back last weekend and I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is so weird. It's only been 2 years and I still feel like it's so different."
Yeah.
But like navigating because so my mom always jokes with me. She's like, I have two siblings, and she's like, of your siblings, you are the best one at navigating medical things.
Oh, okay.
Well, because like I was dealing with my mental health, and then I was getting a treatment for an eating disorder, and like all of this stuff. So like I am the one who knows how to make a phone call to a doctor's office,
Yeah.
but I think that would be really interesting is like how to navigate or like how to navigate the system, not even at
Yeah.
school, but navigating the healthcare system as someone with a serious mental illness or even just dealing with any kind of mental illness
hmm
would be really interesting. And hearing like lived perspective on that would be something I would be interested in.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. That is something that I've been thinking about a lot is like how much I've learned over the years about like and this might sound bad, but I've been learning a lot over the years of what not to say to particularly psychiatrists.
Hmm.
Because in retrospect, knowing what I know now, 10 or 11 years into the whole seriously mentally ill journey, is there were a lot of things that I said and disclosed when I first started working with a psychiatrist when I was like 21. That like in retrospect, I'm like, dude, it's no wonder that they were like sending police after you and shit. Like, so I think a lot of it would really be how to protect your rights and autonomy,
Hmm.
and at the same time still receive treatment, psychiatric treatment, if you need it.
Hmm.
I think a lot of it would also involve discussions about informed consent and just really informing yourself of the different outcomes of different treatment plans and crisis interventions.
Hmm.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
No, I agree. Because, like, even personally, there are things I I think about before I disclose to my
Oh
therapist.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
like, there are things that I'm like, okay, this is going to change the course of my treatment. So, like, how am I going to, like, mention this without it being like, I promise I'm okay, but also, like, I need to talk about this.
Hmm.
But like you said, and mentioning some things to your psychiatrist is always like, okay, let's medicate you more. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah,
goodness.
it's crazy. Uh, relating to what you just said about framing things when you're speaking with your therapist, I do that too. A common phrase that I throw out there is like, I don't have a plan and or I'm not going to do anything crazy, but like if I, because it
Hmm.
like relieves some of the burden from the clinician's side where they're like, okay, now I technically do have like a like out if this were to ever escalate to like a court situation or something,
Hmm.
which unfortunately is something that like in my opinion is important to keep in mind when you're working with any mental health provider. Um, and then the other thing I was going to mention to you is just speaking of medication and stuff. I've actually been decreasing my medication pretty significantly over the last 6 to 12 months. And my goal is to eventually like be completely off of psych meds, at least for a period of time,
Hmm.
to just kind of like see how it goes.
Yeah. I will I will say I had a similar thing a couple months ago. I was like, yeah, I think I've been on this particular regimen of treatment for like 4 years. I think I would be interested to see like
Hmm.
what happens if we adjust it. And then we adjusted it, and I had the worst week of my life.
Oh, really?
So we went back.
Yikes.
But
Have you heard anything about nutrition or metabolic health when it comes to mental health care treatment? Are you familiar with that conversation?
I'm vaguely familiar with that. I think that's something I've been thinking about, like for my overall health,
Hmm.
because I have some like non-mental health
Yeah,
issues as well.
sure.
But I know like nutrition is important, and I think again that holistic kind of approach to things is something I personally want to look into more, but I haven't quite spent the time doing that research yet.
Okay. I'm curious if you might learn more about it once you get started with your master's program,
Hmm.
or even beyond that. It's been something that I keep hearing more and more about over the last like year to year and a half. And I just saw something on Twitter like earlier this morning. Apparently, it was like the Senate just passed something to provide like a ton of additional funding to research surrounding metabolic health and nutrition and its impact on mental health.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
definitely look into that.
Yeah, it's like it's really, really fascinating stuff. I need to do more reading about it myself, but essentially it boils down to like, hey, did you know that if you put toxic food into your body, it's actually also bad for your brain? That's kind of like the crux of it. So,
Makes sense.
yeah. So, how is your mental health like right now? I mean, you said you had some medication issues a couple months back. Are you doing okay with everything?
Yeah.
Tell us
No, I'm
about
doing
yourself.
yeah. No, I'm doing really good. I have a care team that I really, really like my care team.
Hmm.
And this is actually something I was curious. I don't remember if we talked about this last time, but I just made the switch from all virtual to
Hmm.
all in person.
Hmm.
Um, and I think there's something personally for me about the accountability of like sitting down in a room with my therapist and
Yeah.
like it's a lot harder to pretend when they can read all of your body language. And I had only done virtual therapy for 5 years.
Yeah.
So I was kind of curious about your experience with like in-person versus virtual care.
In person is 100% better.
Hmm.
And it's unfortunate that during the COVID lockdowns and stuff, virtual therapy was the norm. Um, so yeah, I'm glad that you're now doing in-person appointments and stuff because it is like, yeah, the body language um, is a huge component of things, and you can often hide that. Unfortunately, my therapist who I've been working with since like I guess 2019-ish. She and I are almost entirely virtual now. I see her in
Hmm.
person maybe at most like once or twice a year because she's in Washington, D.C. And,
Mm.
I moved from the D.C. area down to Southern Virginia about 3 years ago. But I've continued working with her just because we have good rapport and she knows me like extremely well at this point. I mean, we've been working together for like 6 or 7 years almost. So I do virtual just because of that, but like if there was an option where I could see her consistently in person like we used
Hmm.
to, then I would totally do that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Pretty fascinating stuff. That's so wild that you that like your first experience with therapy was virtual.
Well, it was during COVID,
Yeah.
but and like the very first time, I won't say my first experience ever with therapy was virtual because like I was escorted to the school counselor's office once or twice because I was having panic attacks in high school.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Um, and those were in person, but that wasn't like a therapy session. That was 15 minutes with my school counselor being like, okay, let's do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What five
Yeah.
things you can see, four things you can hear.
I love that.
Yeah,
It's like
which
my
I do
favorite
love. I do love
grounding.
that technique,
Yeah, I
but
know. I recommend it to people all the time. It's like it's actually honestly one of the only grounding like CBT exercise thing. It's I guess it would be considered CBT-ish, but
yeah.
I wanted to kind of I guess wrap up by talking about a idea that I had that started as a joke and I was talking to some more people about it the other night. And I was just curious what your thoughts would be. And so, anyway, to stop beating around the bush, I was jokingly talking about doing a bipolar recorder student internship program. And
Whoa.
yeah, like, because I just thought it would be funny. I was like, yo, like, what if I had an intern who was like working for this project and could like support in some way? And I said this during one of the groups, one of the online groups that I host, and people were like, wait, that's actually like not a bad idea. And then I was like starting to think about it more. And now over the last couple of days, I've been like brainstorming it. So I just wanted to
Hmm.
like throw that out there because like you're recently out of undergrad, you're going into grad school. And you've seen a lot of the work that I've done for mental health outreach. So like what are your initial thoughts about like if I were to craft some sort of formal student internship program, maybe for undergraduate, like, or maybe like 300, 400 level psychology students who are pursuing their bachelor's degrees. Does that sound
Yeah.
crazy or does that sound like the best idea ever?
No, that sounds really cool. I think so. I'm thinking about this from two perspectives. I I made my own internship my last semester
Uh-huh.
um, with my friend who is in Montana.
Hmm.
He is a school psychologist, um, practicing now. He works for the University of Montana now, but I met him through one of my theater things that I did. And he works very intensely with positive psychology. And so I was like, hey, can I build an internship around your work for
Mm.
positive psychology for me?
Hmm.
So I built it from the ground up and it was a really cool experience. So like there is a way at Penn State for this to be a thing if that's what you're interested in. Um, but also like I don't know exactly what you would want, but like from a there could be something really cool about giving a psych student who is interested in like private practice or like building their own company an opportunity to work with you and like do kind of administration stuff as well as like get more experience working with or like thinking about the broader mental health field.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting piece of insight. I also was thinking maybe like I could have little assignments for
Hmm.
them to do, to maybe encourage them to think more about like their mental health and like sharing their stories, like whatever format that they would like to do that in. Or like building on campus peer support groups of some kind. That's actually something that one of the members of my groups suggested, and I thought it was a really cool idea too.
No, that's super cool. I think Penn State definitely would have a place for that. Um,
Yeah.
maybe we would have to navigate a little bit, but I think of there could be a way to make that work.
I want to like find a way to like get people paid too. Like I want it to be a paid internship. Maybe not like I wouldn't be able to pay them a lot, but I don't
Mhm.
believe in unpaid work. Like I think that's messed up. So it's you know, I don't know. I'll talk to Dr. Weimer a little bit more, or maybe a couple of other faculty members who I know up there as well, and just like see what they would think of it. If like or maybe if even students could get some sort of like course credit for it.
See, that's the thing is the internship that I did, it counted as it counted as a psych class.
Ooh.
It was like a 400 level psych class, and the requirements were like you came up with your own like I came up with my own reading list, and then you write a final paper or you like do a final project and this kind of stuff. So it could be like they could like interview people or like build a support group or something as their final project.
Mm.
I can see if I can find the information about that and I'll email it to you.
Oh, that would be so cool. Okay, awesome. All right, so this is confirmed as like definitely a great idea. So I'm gonna
Yes.
thank you for helping me out with that. I'm going to keep thinking about this. I'm gonna try to find a way to maybe just figure out how to structure it and all of that. But I will keep an
Hmm.
eye out for that supplemental information in my emails. And before we go here, do you have any social media that you would like to plug? Anything you're working on that you want to talk about at this point?
I don't think so. I'm just kind of living life, hoping to get my get my master's degree. I don't have any like mental health kind of focus stuff. So
You should just like write a book or something,
I mean that's a goal of mine. I'll get there someday.
or start a blog or like a Twitter account. I don't know. All right, Cece. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Hunter. I really appreciated you reaching out and getting a chance to catch up.
Thanks for checking out this conversation with Cece. We wish her all the best in her grad school adventures. Maybe we'll have her back on in the future to share what she learns. I have some very important project updates to share before we close this installment out. First and foremost, I wanted to follow up about the Happy Valleys, a Bipolar Journey audiobook Kickstarter campaign that I mentioned in the last installment of the show. While we got a lot of support from amazing followers of Bipolar Recorder, unfortunately the campaign did not reach its funding target. So I'm back to square one in terms of raising funds to create an audiobook for Happy Valleys, a Bipolar Journey. Therefore, I've overhauled the official Bipolar Recorder web store, which is available at bipolarrecorder.com/shop. There you can find a lot of cool, unique merch. There's also an option to simply make direct donations if you want. I made a few new sticker designs and even official fan club buttons for the Kickstarter campaign, so if you still want a chance to snag some of those, check them out at bipolarrecorder.com/shop. I'll also include the direct link in the episode description. Not only are there stickers and buttons, but there are also official signed copies of some of my previous books, and even original poetry cards, which are kind of a fun little creative offering that I've done over the years for people who want handcrafted, tangible, collectible, original artwork. In other news, I'm coordinating additional mental health outreach presentations with Penn State's psychology department. We were initially anticipating doing the presentations in fall of this year, but due to some logistical issues, I'm most likely going to be going back out to the university sometime in early 2026. That's always super exciting, and I'll keep you all posted when something is formally coordinated with PSU's psychology department. Be sure to follow Bipolar Recorder on Twitter or X or Instagram at Bipolar Recorder. I am on Twitter/X at HHKeegan if you would like to follow my personal account. I can also be reached via email at hunterhkeegan@gmail.com in case you have some comments or questions or anything else that you would like to share with me, but you're not on social media. And for a final time, remember to check out bipolarrecorder.com/shop so I can keep raising funds to create an audiobook edition of Happy Valleys. By the way, Happy Valleys was released back in February of this year, 2025. It's available on Amazon in Kindle, paperback, and hardcover formats. If you want to get a text edition of Happy Valleys, check it out there. I'll include that link in the episode description as well. My name is Hunter Keegan. Thank you for listening to this installment of the Bipolar Recorder podcast. Have a great day, evening, or night, wherever you are. Bipolar Recorder is a listener-supported show. To help keep the show running, consider checking out our Patreon page or visiting bipolarrecorder.com.
Unless otherwise stated, the hosts and guests on Bipolar Recorder are not licensed mental health professionals. Bipolar Recorder is not a substitute for therapy or professional medical intervention. If you are having a mental health crisis, please contact your local emergency services.